Hi there, my name is Syed. I'm a technical systems engineer with AGI, and I will be showing you how to use the SDF. So there are two main portions of the SDF that we're going to be looking at. One is just through the browser, and the second is through STK itself. So we're going to start with the browser, walk through how you log on, and just kind of navigate it. And from there, we're going to upload some files to the SDF, and along with that, we're going to go into STK itself and download some objects and upload in some objects to the SDF, just to give you a better idea of how exactly it all works. So let's get right into it. So the first thing to focus on is that you want to be on sdf.agi.com. So you could just go ahead and enter that in. And once you do, you'll be led to the splash screen. It's a traditional splash screen, STK Data Federate. And we're going to go ahead and log in. And this is where you would make an AGI account, or you can create a new account here. For me, I have my credentials already in, and I'm going to go ahead and log in. Now that we're past the SDF splash screen here, we can see that we're on My Dashboard. So the way the dashboards are configured is you have different sites for different things. So by that I mean we have different little widgets almost. On the left column here we have My Sites, on the right here we have My Activities, and here we have My Documents. So let's break down what each of them kind of mean. So when it comes to My Sites, what this corresponds to is it could be different sections of where information is stored. So for example, if your organization is using the SDF, you may have different sections for different subsystems. So maybe one is where you store your information about antennas, and then the other section is where you store information about, say, the aircraft itself. Or you may use one of those sites to store some classified information that only some groups can see or need to see. It really helps make things organized and make sure that everybody is on track to what they need to see. Along with that, within the dashboard, you have your activities. So you have the ability to filter the activities of either folks you're following, everyone else's and so forth, and you can filter it by the time it takes or the time it's been. So any activity in the last 7 days up to 28 days. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to physically see how some documents are being added into the SDF as well as how they're being updated. For example, one of my colleagues here has added a document called targets.cn, and then we also see that he was able to update this document. So it kind of gives you an immediate representation of what documents are there and if we're updating anything, just to make sure that someone's not accidentally updating something maybe that you worked on and they shouldn't be, or you can go and talk to them afterwards. Along with that, and speaking of documents that you may or may not have updated, down here we have the section that allows you to keep track of your own content. So of course, when you first start using the SDF or your organization starts using the SDF, you may not have as many documents, but as you start building up that list, it becomes more and more difficult to maybe exactly find what document you were working on, or maybe something that you have worked on, say, a year or two ago. So with My Documents, what this allows you to do is it allows you to then go through and keep track of some certain documents in case you are actively updating them, actively changing them, or anything of that sort. So along with that, if we look in the top right, you can see here that we have a traditional search bar. So if you have any certain keywords, you're able to enter them in here to get a listing of results that may pertain to exactly what you're looking for, or you may have to search it depending on how the search results have been configured, which we will also get into in a little bit. Along with that, as you can see on the left here, we have my name. And if I click on the drop down, you can see that I have access to the user dashboard, which is what we see here on the screen, as well as my profile. Let's go ahead and click on my profile. So within your profile, you actually have things like info about your own credentials, which may seem redundant, but it's actually important just to make sure that your credentials are stored properly. The last thing you would want is now your name spelled wrong or confused with someone else, and then you having an organization-wide confusion about who's uploading what files or what have you. Along with that, we can go to the Sites tab, and you can see the sites that you have activity feeds enabled for, and just what sites overall that you are able to visually see. And going down the list, we have content. And this, once again, is kind of related to that widget about the files. So it allows you to just have an immediate recognition of what you've added or what you've changed. Along with that, we have notifications, which, as the name implies, tells you about any notifications. And I will not go into it, but we have the trash can, which is, as you may guess, it's anything that you have deleted but may be in that sort of delete purgatory where you may not want to get rid of it and you may take it later. Kind of like the recycling bin on your desktop Windows, or your Windows desktop, I should say. Okay, so far this is kind of how we would just navigate through the basic dashboard and your profile. Along with that, let's go ahead and just take a look at some of the files that are listed in one of the sites. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on AGI Support. So once we're in one of the sites, in this case for me, it's AGI support, you can see here that we have, I would say, a pretty traditional look of a file storage service. What we have here is we have folders that are organized that have their own subfolders that kind of divide up the information more. Along with that, at the top here, you can see that we have a filter to say what you want to look at. It could be specific documents, it could be folders. We also have the create section here. So if you need to create a folder, plain text, HTML, XML, or any other type of document from a template. And likewise, down the list we go, we have upload. So we have an upload feature for uploading your information to the SDF, which allows you to upload things like maybe low-size scenario files, text files, things of that nature. If you really want to upload something a little bit larger, we give you that option through the upload large files capability. So this is there for the reason of making sure that we're uploading things at the proper speed and organizing them properly. So just up to you, pick the discernment of which one you're going to choose. I would say probably for something under 500 megabytes, you may want to use the upload, but may want to use the upload large files for anything larger than that, because this is at the mercy of your internet speed. So if you have good internet, you don't really have to worry about that. Okay. So let's go a bit further. Right now we're at the subfolder level, and we're going to go into user collaboration. And now here we can start seeing what has been posted. In this case, we have a lot of what are known as .vdfs, which is a compressed version of an STK scenario. So that's really what STK excels with, or the SDF excels with, is it's a really good data storage option for STK-related entities. This way you have the ability to collaborate with your users who are also using STK and keep track of any changes that are made to make sure that if maybe a user or your colleague made a change that you aren't exactly expecting, you could still go to an older version without having fear of it being lost in the number of files that exist. Along with that, we know that there's going to be a lot of different files that are stored in the SDF, and there needs to be a type of organization method. In here, we have the ability to organize things by tags, or I should say, tag files with metadata. So for example, maybe we want to look for a scenario or a file that has to deal with satellites. So I could, of course, just click on the satellite tag here and see what gets loaded up. And right here, I can see that I have two files in this case. In this case, it's one called Maui tracking _ deck access, and deck access is mainly used for space object observation. And that's exactly what it says here. Along with swarm, which is showing a string of pearls of satellites. So as you can see, the metadata here is functioning properly and makes it a bit quicker. We're lucky in the sense that in this site folder, we only have like say two tags for satellites and so forth, but you may have things on the order of hundreds or maybe even thousands. So it's a really good way to help filter down the search results a bit more to make your life a little bit easier when you're navigating through things. Okay, so along with that, we kind of showed how to navigate through this library, and we're kind of showing some of the objects that you would look for as if you were searching for something in the SDF. But a large portion of this is also loading in your own types of files. Okay? So I'm going to go back on the left side here to the library where it says Documents, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Upload. All right? We get this little prompt that tells me what files I want uploaded. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Pay no mind to my cluttered desktop here. And we're going to go down to our SDF folder that I've created. Or I think it's up here at the top. Right there. And in here, I just have two example files that I have. One is an example.txt, and one is a thumbnail. I think the thumbnail looks a little bit cooler, so we're going to go ahead and load in this thumbnail image. And as you can see, it's 20 megabytes, and because of the internet speed here, it still takes a little time. So that should give you a good idea of when to use the upload large files versus the upload files. And we're going to hit, there it goes. Okay. So now we can see here right on this level of documents, now we have something called thumbnail.png. I'm going to highlight over it. So real quick, I uploaded it. I didn't change any of its tags, but you can see here that there is a 1.0 next to it. And that's a version control option there. So what that's telling me is right now this is the first version that we uploaded to the SDF. Now, if someone was to upload a second version of this, which is also called thumbnail.png, we would see that now that 1.0 may change to a 1.1, a 2.0, or whatever is appropriate. So let's go ahead and click on thumbnail.png. and it will load us to the file page. Each independent file has specific settings that you can configure. A really nice thing too is, as you can see here, we get a preview of some certain file types in the SDF. So when you upload, I believe, a .txt or a .png or any other type of image, for the most part, we're able to get it to preview right in the SDF in the web browser. This can be extended to an extent to SDK scenarios. With SDK, you upload scenarios in the form of a VDF, which is a format that the SDF needs in order to upload SDK scenarios. What you also can do is you can load what's known as a .czml file. It's a type of XML file that allows you to take a higher level look at what's in your SDK scenario and bring it in to be interactable and controlled. So basically, it just brings in an open source globe, and it would allow you to control the globe and look at some of the entities. That's really beneficial because it allows you to look at what's in the SDK scenario without necessarily having to download the scenario in case it's large and open it up and waste time in case it's not what you're exactly looking for. So that's one really big thing, is we're trying to find many ways to make sure that we can use the SDF and SDK to get exactly the files you're looking for if it is something like an SDK scenario, an image, or a .txt file. So if we look here on the right, we can see that we have a download option for specific users, and we also have a whole bunch of document actions. You can see that we have a view in browser, we have edit offline, you have the upload new version, which is the version control I was talking about, as well as edit properties. You can see that we have like traditional file operations like move, copy, and delete, but we also have permissions aspects. So if you remember, earlier I was mentioning the sites and how you can limit permissions per each site. You can likewise do the same here. So what you can do is you can manage permissions where now maybe you want to say, we have a file here that we want some users to see, but not everyone to download. And you have the ability, if you were to click on manage permissions, to go through and see what users and groups have access to this. So you'd be able to filter and say, oh, I want the electronics group have the ability to download this, but I don't want them to have the ability to update it. Any changes they make, I need them to talk to me, so I want to keep it version controlled just through me limiting them from uploading anything. So you have those kinds of abilities. If you remember earlier, we also were talking about the metadata and tagging, so we have that here. Since I uploaded this image and it doesn't really have anything associated with it to start off with, I have the little right pencil icon here that allows me to edit those tags. So once again, if I click edit tags, if it allows me to, there it is. Took a little second there. It allows me to put in things like the name, any specific author to this, as well as select tags. So the nice thing is you may have a repository of tags, or you may have users who start typing in different tags that get added to this master list. So for example, if your organization first installs the SDF and uses it, they may not see any type of metadata in there. However, if I was to add metadata in here, like SDF_test, which I won't use just so it's not saved in our database, but if you were to put in a tag like that, you would see it added to the master list, and now any other user could go through this dropdown and add it. So for example, my image did show some satellites. If I wanted to, I could go to that satellite metadata tag and hit plus, and now we see it here on the right side. I can hit the red or the black X here to remove it, and I can just hit OK to save it. And you can see here that we have different things like MIME types and so forth. So one thing I do want to highlight about MIME types is I did mention that you have the ability to change the file type here. So for example, if you're using a VDF, you would want to change this to the VDF file format. And what this does is it gives you a little bit more insight as to what's going on, or maybe if in the search bar I type in .vdf, now we would see it show up in a giant list versus if I had it saved as a .png or any other file extension type. So just be mindful of which file extension type you put in the MIME type and make sure it imitates what the file type is or what you're trying to want people to search it as. Sometimes they don't always align, but that's really up to you. Okay. So far we were able to show us uploading a document to the SDF. We were able to show its permissions, along with kind of going through the dashboard and the different profile options you have. So that was just a quick run through of the browser version of the SDF. But we know that sometimes as a user, you want to just access the SDF from SDK and load a scenario that maybe your colleague had worked on and finished up half an hour ago before lunch or something like that. So we're going to go into SDK. As you can see here, I have your traditional SDK kind of window here. And let's say I want to go ahead and add an object or download an object from the SDF first. So for example, let's say I want to download a specific aircraft. So this is important. For objects, you want to load them by inserting in their standard, through the standard object interface here of insert STK objects. And we have a method. And every object, or almost every object, has a method of insert from STK Data Federate. So let's go ahead and click on that. And we'll give it a second to connect to the internet here. And now we're brought to this main window of the SDF. So one thing to note is, if you remember, I had to manually enter in my credentials for the SDF web browser. The same is necessary here in STK. So pay note to this. Anytime you open up STK and use the SDF for the first time, it won't magically sync up with whatever you have in the web browser version of it. So look here in the top right corner. It tells you what or who you are logged in as. And by default, I'm logged in as the guest. So what this means is there's a few credentials that the guest has. If you're connected to just basic internet and not a closed off network, you have access to some of the public files that we have available under the guest name. If I wanted to change it, all I would have to do is click on guest, and then I can click on switch user here. You also can change the server, so instead of it being connected to our server, you could then just put in the regular server. So here's where I would enter in my basic username and password. So msyed@stk.com would be my username here, and then my password, which I will not tell you. And now hopefully here we see it logging in if I entered in my credentials correctly, and we should see it change in the top right. And there you go. So now saying I'm logged in as msyed at stk.com. So let's go ahead and go to the Browse tab. We're going to go into Sites. If you remember, that's where we were on the browser. Remember here, you could see all the sites I have access to. This case, I'm going to go to AGI Support, Document Library, User Collaboration. And this is just how ours is structured. Of course, your organizations may structure them differently. And let's see. Actually, 30-day temp maybe. I'm currently just looking for a specific aircraft file that I can load in. So let's see if we can find. Yep, there it is. So we have STK standard objects. And in this case, since it's a .ac I'm looking for, that's an aircraft file type. I can go into aircraft. And there we go. So we have a standard listing of aircraft that I believe are just available with STK regularly, but we have them here for you to download. And right here, you can see the version that they're at. So let's say maybe you did upload version of an aircraft and it was my secret aircraft 3.0. You may come in here and want to download it and see that now it's, oh, whoa, it's at version 4.0. That's where you may want to do something, like go back to the web browser version, look in the change log, see which one of your colleagues changed it, and have a discussion with them about why they changed it the way they did. But in this case, I'll go ahead and add a B2 Spirit. So we're going to add that, and you can see here we have that file transfer taking place. Once again, you're at the mercy of your internet speed, so hopefully you're in an area that has a good enough internet connection, or a network connection if you're on a closed network. And now we can see that I have the B2 Spirit in my scenario. Let's go ahead and give it just a quick route here. See if we can see it. Okay, so this is good. It's telling me that something's working here. So we're gonna just see if we can get a basic point-to-point just to visualize this. Let's zoom to this. And there you go. So you can see that we were able to upload it, or download, I'm sorry, a B2 Spirit into STK. I can even go into the properties of this, and we can see it's using Aviator and giving it as accurate as we can on an unclassified area, certain metrics about the B2 Spirit. So now you can imagine we just downloaded this B2. Now maybe we want to add changes. Maybe we are in the classified environment where now we can add some more data metrics that are pertaining to the B2. So let's just pretend we did that, because we're not in unclassified, so I cannot do that. But now let's go ahead and upload this back to the SDF. So if you remember, to insert independent objects to the from the SDF into STK, you normally would go insert new, and then whatever object you select, you have your method here on the right. That's called from STK Data Federate. Along with that, though, you could see here that if we were to click on File, you now have the saving options for saving to the SDF. In particular, there's two that are important. There's the Save to STK Data Federate, then there's the Save B2 Spirit to STK Data Federate. Of course, this name here in the dropdown would change depending on which object we selected on. So the main difference between these two is that Save B2 Spirit to the STK Data Federate would save just the aircraft object in the same location if you didn't change the name, and you would have that there as a separate object. What Save to STK Data Federate does is, remember how we had those VDFs that were showing up? Save to STK Data Federate would essentially say not just the B2 Spirit, but the entire scenario will get saved to the SDF. So that now someone has access to the B2, maybe some scenario settings that you put in, and any other types of platforms that are within your scenario at the time. So for example, I could click Save to STK Data Federate, and now you can see it's loading here, and now it's asking me, where do I want to save it? And remember, like I said, STK scenarios in particular need to be a VDF. So we automatically get this saved as a type VDF, and now I can pick a location. However, since I am on our public location, I will just skip the step of saving, but you can imagine it's like if you were saving really anything. It could be a Word document, just you pick the directory you want to save it and go ahead and hit save. And if you have permissions, it will allow it, and if you do not, I don't even believe it will show up, so you shouldn't even have the ability to save in directories or sites that you don't have the right capabilities to do so. So through this, you have the ability to, like I was saying, open up an object from the SDF and load it in through the Insert SDK Objects. You have the ability to save a scenario or object to the SDF. And the one last thing is, as you can save a scenario, you can also open a scenario. And that is through File Open. And right here, the left column, it says STK Data Federate. So as you can see, we try to make this really simplistic for how to access all these options, but this was just really a reading to show you these little nuances and gotchas and hopefully help you skip over them without spending too much time on them. But if you have any questions, please feel free to contact our support team or just go on our website for more information at help.agi.com. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, see ya.